Hello and welcome. I am Lee Hopwood. I'm the CEO here at the CCMA and your host for the next hour, where we're going to be exploring innovation in a hybrid working leadership team. Now, it doesn't matter where a conversation starts with me these days. At some point, it always comes back to hybrid working, remote working, and this ongoing debate about whether it works or it doesn't. And every time we are always talking about the impact on the front line. In the context of contact centres, we're always saying about how it works for the front line. And there has been a lot of debate recently about whether innovation and creativity is stifled in this new way of working. So we thought it would be time to have a discussion on this, and specifically looking at innovation in the contact centre and seeing if it is stifled or not. So is innovation and creativity limited within the leadership team due to hybrid working? So leadership teams are often working remotely these days, but maybe they found a new way of doing things. So I'm delighted to have with me today Louise Walsh, who is Chief Customer Contact Officer at Utilita. We also have industry-leading consultant, Nerys Caulfield, and also here with us is Ben Booth, who is the CEO at Max Contact, and obviously a technology company. So it's going to be interesting to hear about how they thrive with innovation in their organisation as well. And I am really interested on your views on this. So if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A. If you've got a comment, if you've got maybe a piece of advice you'd like to share, maybe there's a story you'd like to share, please do put that in the chat. So I'm going to try and take us on a journey from ideation to implementation of innovation. But first, Nerys, can you tell us, what is innovation? What do we mean by innovation?
So it's newness, isn't it? It's new ideas. And I think in our context, it's allowing the time and the space and having then the wraparound processes to drive new ideas for improvement at its most simplest form. I think that's probably how my view of what is innovation stands.
You know, I love it, and certainly as we are moving so fast in the contact center industry, the world is moving so fast. And actually, innovation. I hear a lot of people talk about the importance of innovation. In that, actually, it's not just innovation to get ahead; it's innovation. You've got to have innovation just to stand still. And so I want to get so that you guys know, I have a number of polls throughout this next hour. So we're going to go to our first poll, and because I want to get the viewers' view. So do you think innovation is thriving in your hybrid contact center, or is it suffering? So please do go ahead and vote away. Is innovation thriving, or is it suffering? Or maybe it's about the same in your contact center than it ever was. I never know how long it might take for people to vote, but there's only 3 options, so I am going to go to the results. Let's take a look at those results. About the same. That's really interesting. To be fair, I kind of had a response for if it was really thriving or if it was really suffering. I hadn't really thought about it being the same. And I guess having said that, there is more in favour of it thriving, which is fantastic. So we can explore today where and how that is happening. So, Louise, I'm going to ask the same question to you. Is innovation thriving, suffering, or actually is it staying the same in your contact centre?
I mean, I'm not going to go with about the same just to upset all your responses. I think it's thriving. I think it took a while to get used to working from home. But actually, next week will be 4 years since lockdown, which is terrifying. I think it's about how you engage your staff, whether it's hybrid, whether they're in the office, and it's about getting everyone's viewpoints. I certainly think it's thriving. I think a lot of that is based on being able to get more people in the room. I think when you're in the office, you can't have 30 people in a room, and actually that's not necessarily a useful thing, but actually everyone can feed in, everyone's got used to remote technology. And in some ways that gives everyone a voice, which I think has helped bring people on a journey in terms of innovating with, as you said, a world that is moving so fast. If you are standing still and everyone else is moving, you are going backwards. We can't be doing that.
And do you know what? It's interesting. One of the things I think we'll pull out over the course of the conversation is we've almost got the best of both worlds potentially, with the technology that can really help us. So I want to try and break this down. So I mentioned earlier, I'm going to try and take us on a journey through the stages of innovation. So a little bit of research and the kind of stages that innovation goes through: problem identification, ideation, advocacy, experimentation, commercialization, and then implementation. So I guess the question for me now is, do we think that contact centers are able to identify problems better, faster in a hybrid environment, or the same as we always did, leaning into the fact that we've got maybe more tools around, but maybe we don't see each other to bounce those ideas around so much? Nerys, I'm going to come back to you. How are problems being identified in the contact center now? And I guess that's problems in terms of operational challenges as well as customer experience issues that could be different.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. I come into a business at the point of which they're ready to think about new ideas because they've identified a problem. And I think the hybrid working has, and also, the need to have the transparency in activity more so from the stakeholder community has meant that there's more eyes on in terms of what is happening. Is it good? Is it bad? And as such, I think the identification as a consequence of this need to encapsulate what is good and what is bad and what does performance look like has highlighted the identification of areas that are there a problem, and then it's moving into the ideation. So I actually think, the catalyst to recognizing need has come from this hybrid working space.
Interesting. And so guys, if you're able to share where your ideas come from, please do stick them in the chat. Let us know where your ideas come from. Louise, where do the ideas come from in your contact center?
From our agents. I think with hybrid working, historically, if you've got devs that work here, there and everywhere, actually what tech has allowed us to do is have them sharing screens with agents, seeing where load times are. I think it's really important to recognise that no one knows our customers or our systems better than the agents that use them every day. I've been here about 12 years and I predate most of our systems. I can have all these great ideas, but in practice, our agents are the cornerstone of the business. They are what our customers see, and therefore they know best what our customers need and where we can see help. And we saw that certainly in energy with the EB scheme. We were taking 18,000 calls a month where customers wanted to transfer credit from their electric meter to their gas. That came from our agent, and within about 6 weeks, we gave customers the functionality to self-serve that. But it was our agents that identified that as a need for our customers. So I think that's a really important thing to remember is no matter where you are in the business, everyone has great ideas. We need to acknowledge them. We need to make sure we're providing feedback. And to some extent, it's easier to do that through a hybrid working because everyone can have a voice through Teams, through Zoom, whatever the systems you use are.
And it's interesting, there's a comment that's coming in the chat. We have a continuous improvement team in our contact center. Part of that is an idea called Concept Corner, where our agents can submit their ideas for change, either for quality of life benefits for themselves or for customer needs. So yeah, it's I guess the continuous improvement team are looking for the problems, and the agents are the ones that can surface the problems, both from in terms of working in the contact center and also for customers. And yeah, another comment, like Louise, our team members hear what stakeholders are saying, and we capture this through an informal and formal process such as our continuous improvement team. And so again, you have got those formal and informal, like you say, Louise. There's teams. I'm aware of members that have ideation buckets where you can throw your ideas in, and you can really build loads of ideas. Whether you take them all forward or not is obviously another question, but they certainly seem to come from all over the place.
I love the idea of concept corner.
That's quite cool, isn't it? That is quite cool. So let's move on to ideation. So we've mentioned there that the front line are the guys and gals that are identifying the problems, but then moving on to ideation, the birth of creative ideas. So it's great having a problem. What about the solution? Where are those ideas coming from? So I want to go to a poll that kind of leans into what we've just been talking about. So our second poll, there's only 3 polls, but our second poll is, where do the creative ideas come from in your operation? So this is problem solving, but it's also, where do the solutions come from? Is it the advisors on the front line that are identifying the problems and going, what we need is one of these. What we need is a change of process. What we need, is it the advisor that's coming up with that? Maybe it's the team leaders. I can read through the list and hopefully you guys will have voted by the time I get to the bottom. So senior leadership team, maybe they can see it because they're getting access to different sets of data. It could be simply your customer feedback. Your customers are telling you what you could be doing differently. Insights teams, obviously they get access to loads of information. The quality team, they see lots of what's going on. The change team, it's their job to look for it and come up with potential new ideas, or maybe it's other departments. So let's see what the answers are. Let's see where the poll landed. It's always a advisors on the front line, of course, because they are talking to customers all the time. So it makes total sense that it's those guys. And it's the team leaders, because they're the ones that will be hearing from the advisors saying, can we do this differently? Can we do that better? And interestingly, customer feedback, fascinating, and also not really that surprising as results. Ben.
Yes.
Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Ben, you're from Max Contact. You are a technology company. You guys are going through innovation the whole time. Thanks for supporting us today. Now, you rely on innovation to keep your own products and services ahead. Where do the ideas come from in your business?
It's, to be honest, in all honesty, similar feedback. So we have the feedback loops, as we call them, from everywhere. So I was almost going to say it's all of the above. So everything from, you log into our application, there's a panel on the side where you can see what's coming, but you can also put your own ideas. We use our own technology from our frontline team, which is support, account managers, ourselves as a leadership team, the wider market, doing things like this and getting out there and speaking to other contact centers, also other technology providers. So they really do come from everywhere, and that ultimately creates the new challenge. You've got so many ideas. How do you decide which ones you're actually going to implement and are going to deliver the value? So I do agree with that change to hybrid actually made everyone focus on trying to solve problems. So it did, but it also did create that issue as well that not everyone can be on every meeting. No, you can have everyone on every meeting. You can't do it as well. So continually looking everywhere. One of the biggest changes we've had in our company is those feedback loops, and the information comes in from nearly every single source that we can think of. But it's actually amalgamating that and making sense, and then turn it into, like say, ideation, turn it into a project, and making sure it delivers value is the tough part now.
Oh. See it and hear it in the judges as well, is we see and hear that those feedback loops, so the ideas come in from the front line, but then they like to know that it's something, what's happened to it.
Yeah.
Is it happening? And that, when you talk about the feedback loops, is that also what you're talking about there, Ben?
Yeah, both ways. I mean, there's nothing worse that kills innovation where people are putting ideas forward and they don't hear anything. Even if the idea has been rejected, you still want to hear it's been considered. So to keep that culture of innovation going on around the business, the feedback loop is a loop. It's both ways. We have it with our clients. We get lots of ideas from clients. We can't build everything our clients ask us to build. So we have to have those feedback loops in to say, you know, your idea's been recognized, we've considered it, it's been accepted, etc. But also it has been rejected and reasons why. Oh, we like your idea, and it's actually just going to stay on the backlog until we get more people who want the same thing. So those feedback loops have to work. Otherwise, you know, I think most businesses will see the quickest way to stifle innovation is just to reject an idea, because people feel like, well, you didn't listen to me, so why am I going to give you another idea? So across, and that is also where the effort comes in, because it's hard, because there's so much coming through, you have to deal with it all.
And arguably that's one of the things that continuous improvement teams do. I like one of the ideas that's come in. We have a Teams channel, Innovation Station. I like that, Innovation Station, which allows any team member to raise an idea when they think about it. I like that. We're coming up with, I say we're coming up with, our lovely audience are kind of sharing some of these fantastic ways that they're capturing and driving ideas. And yes, obviously we use a continuous we have a continuous improvement team. So there's some great things coming through on the chat. Louise, how does it work at Utilita? Where do the ideas come from? So you've done the problem identification, but where do the ideas come from, and how do you capture them?
It can be really difficult, because with 400 or so advisors just on the front line, you obviously get a lot of ideas. And as Ben said, it's really important to make sure we're giving feedback. No, we can't do this. We can't do this now, or this is where we are with it, and this is where we're going with it. I think it's really important to make sure we have that open communication. So it's discussed in team briefs. We quite often have open Teams chats, so actually you can just have that open dialogue and talk through an idea there and then. Because I think sometimes you risk the idea that if you stick it all into a pot, and I'll get to that in a minute, and I'll make sure I get that feedback, sometimes that can get lost. And actually, to play on Ben's point slightly around everyone can be in a meeting, actually Amazon works the 2 pizza principle, which is if you've got more people in a room than you can feed with 2 pizzas, then you've got too many people to really make progress on an idea. So we get lots and lots of ideas. They come through on Teams. Again, we have idea management. We have to raise change concepts, because I think sometimes the problem is when you have too much change, or when everything is a priority, nothing is. So it's really important that we keep that conversation going. Actually, this is where you are in the process. This is where we've got to in terms of our interpretation or analysis of this potential change, and actually where does it fit in the wider strategy. So it goes literally from the top down, so from our exec leadership team all the way down to our advisor on the phone. And actually we have forums where you do have lots of people discussing the ideas. It's about then distilling it down into smaller working groups to make sure that actually we can manage change in an agile way.
Have you ever done a hackathon, Louise?
Oh, I love a hackathon. Yes, we do. And it always amazes me how quickly people can do things, not to a prod ready state, but get things to a concept when actually you give them that bit of creativity. This is my idea. I haven't stipulated a solution, because we're very good at the operational level, I think, at solutionizing. And a little knowledge is a very dangerous thing, because it can code. So I'm like, right, this is exactly what I want. Do it like this. Actually, hackathons, I think, are brilliant, because it's me kind of going to my dev team and saying, I've got this idea. I think this would be great. The speed at which they turn things around is incredible.
Tell us, for those that might not know what a hackathon is, actually, what is a hackathon? Because and I'm aware that it is a concept for innovation and development, but can you just briefly describe what a hackathon is?
It's a really short kind of, we take ideas from around the business, it's fed into a very specific team. So we basically say, you have got a week, we're going to vote on which ideas we want you to work on. And it's the dev team then very quickly coming up with a proof of concept almost, not to a point where it's ready for a production environment. It's not necessarily ready to go live. That might take a while longer. But then at the end of that week, they have a demo back to stakeholders that say, well, actually, this is how we do it. And it's a really good way of making sure that people understand the speed at which things can be developed, albeit not to prod, but they can really start seeing their ideas coming to life, which I think really helps agents to understand that actually look at what we can do. I think they're really important. Ben, I know you use them too, don't you?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we do. So we operate in development, I don't say agile, but what's called dual track development as well, which is the easiest way to describe it is we have two conveyor belts. One's discovery, which is we're constantly trying, testing, seeing, learning, and things that go on discovery conveyor belt, they drop into the production conveyor belt. Not everything does, because sometimes we learn and we decide, nope, that's going to take 10 times longer than we expected. So let's park that idea. Well, putting that in, it's an expectation we're continually doing discovery, because that's how we move to production. So, and then the hackathons tend to be for business challenges and problems also around the business, because though we do that and develop for product and it's almost accepted, it's strange how as a technology company, it doesn't filter into the rest of the business when you're trying to solve business problems. So we do the hackathon days as well. So we let each department do even what's causing you a problem. We're going to give you the time, effort, budget to solve that problem. Off you go. And we prove out the concept and then empower them to do so. I think it's important with the bigger projects, I will say, to have a sponsor that cuts through red tape and can make decisions, allocate extra budget when needed faster. Because one of the things that stifles innovation is process, and process is good. But we adopted a sponsor to allow that team to, keep on with the projects and see it through to completion. And if there's any hurdles there, the sponsor allows to get rid of those hurdles much faster. So that really helped on the bigger projects, because the smaller ones are quite easy to do. But as you get bigger and bigger, there tends to be a lot more reasons not to continue. So that's a learning I'd give on larger projects.
I love the etymology of hackathon because it comes from hacker, which actually means clever programmer, and marathon, which is obviously an event of endurance. So it's a portmanteau, but the geek in me loves where the words come from.
And just a couple of the other ideas that have been coming through the chat. Dare to disrupt, like that. Bright ideas, love that. But Ben, coming back to you, I'm going to try and incorporate one of the questions that's come in. A hackathon feels like it's an event, it's a moment, it's a time where it's an engagement opportunity as well as a moment of innovation. How is that different to going through agile sprints? How is it different to that agile way of working?
Yeah, no, I mean, Agile's quite planned. So you break things down into small stories. Even the concept of having a lean canvas, a one pager for proof of the problem while we're doing it, it still goes through a process to get to discovery that's within a framework. A hackathon is a lot more open problem. Go and do whatever you need to do. So. The one problem all businesses are facing at the moment is we all need to ensure we're delivering value. So you can't keep giving carte blanche. And I'd say the agile framework is that framework. It's business as usual. You're expecting to deliver value at the end or learn something. With a hackathon, you might not learn much. It could be completely wasted time. But there's also a lot more freedom and empowerment to the staff rather than it going through that formulated process. They are engaging. I would encourage they're done in person, get teams together. It's a real good event, get food in, make it enjoyable, show off what they've done at the end. There's usually some funny moments where not much happened, but there's also some absolutely, pivotal changes that you can get. We've implemented some of our biggest changes in product and in the business from hackathons. And it shows you how powerful they are. If you give people the freedom to go off and try and find solutions to problems, it's amazing with some of the ideas they come up with. Whereas I would say in agile, it's still a framework that you're operating within.
Thank you. So there's got to be challenges associated with this. That all sounds all very lovely, but there's going to be challenges with it. And in particular, leaning back into the topic of conversation is what happens if your leadership team is located all over the country. So, or even all over the world. It could be that you might have them in different countries. Neris, how do you overcome this as a challenge if your leadership team is all over the place?
Yeah, so I've worked with lots of clients in the last 9 years that are global, and so had to do everything remotely and then just generally dispersed all over the UK. And I think just touching on something, taking a step back, everything will work if culturally, somebody in the chat has talked about psychological safety. Everything will work if culturally there is an appetite and a clarity about changing the status quo, about addressing problems, articulating why the value of the problems, the value of changing and moving away from the problems, or just creating a new clarity of ambition. So I think things tend to work at this level and having this hybrid coming together if culturally you are all on point and everybody's really clear on the problem statement and why you want to solve it, or the ambition and why you want to get there. So, then you're into this, how is this, framework going to facilitate having 35 people in America in a workshop, which, I did a couple of years ago, to drive through innovation, because the reality is it's really clear what we're trying to all achieve. And, this, again, culturally, I work with customers who won't do cameras on. And then you're like, well, are you really engaging, or are you actually, got another work stream and you're looking at your emails? There's a real attitude to engaging in this process and driving innovation. And again, coming back to what Louise said and what the people on the webinar have said, this closed loop notion, if you look back at the day, how many post boxes did there used to be in contact center calling floors, where these, you'd open it up 3 months later and go, oh, look, people have actually put some stuff in here. Thankfully, we've moved on. But it is about this continual improvement. And it's beautiful to see continual improvement sitting in ops now as well, and coming from ops and bridging that gap between tech and ops. So I think it's a challenge. I think there's really good tools. I do think, to Ben's point, it is better. It is better if you're workshopping together in the same physical location, because there's nuances in body language that, as the facilitator, you pick up on, and that side of things. So you can do it, but it takes real focus.
I think you're right. It does take real focus, and I think you're right. It culturally, everybody on that, in that call, if you're a leadership team driving innovation through virtual means, it does need that focus. I'm going to read out I haven't read the whole thing, but I'm going to read out a comment that's come in the chat. We're a global business across 11 locations. By default, we've had to build our way of working to consider hybrid and time zones. Another challenge. Our purpose is central to our success, aligned and clear, and underpinned by our values. It's our culture and ways of working that are the foundation of our business success. And one assumes, thank you, Joe, one assumes that actually that it's also that culture, or those foundations that enable you to be engaged. And if you're working remotely, then you know the people that are in the room with you. I guess there's also the challenge of working in silos, especially if you are around in different locations. But also there is silo mentality, even when you're working in the same location, even if you're in the same location. So that breaking down those silos, I think, is also as important. And of course, once by the way, Nerys, that group of 35 people, how many pizzas did they eat?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I was here. They were all in Texas. They were eating
more than 2.
Definitely. Exactly, Louise. There was definitely more than 2. And it was really coming together of a very, very cross-functional team who had siloed notions of what their lens looked like. So it was like, how do you galvanize this? So it was challenging.
So you got your idea, you know what the problem is, you got all these ideas and now it's about trying to get one or more of those ideas off the ground, giving it the potential that it might have. So getting buy-in from stakeholders, I guess, is really important. Is that difficult if everyone is located all over the place? Ben, do you bring people into the office for this phase of innovation?
Yeah, everyone was. We do for certain. There's no 1 and 0 answer to these questions. I mean, I expect departmental innovation just to happen. It's an expectation. So in your department, innovation. As we get to the bigger cross-departmental projects, we have a bit of a rule to make it happen. So especially if it's a feature or something that's going to clients, it's someone who can build it, someone who can sell it, someone who can market it, and it encourages those because you get the other ideas as well and understanding. But if it is a larger project, we do tend to do it in the office. We don't always do it in the office. Actually, there's a preference from the staff to do it in the office as well. It's not us forcing. They want to come in. We like to engage. You get the ideas on the board. Having food, it becomes a bit of a social, actually. And if you're engaged, and if you get the purpose and what people try and understand right, it is an event. It's a strange thing. It is an event that they do. I mean, I don't book these innovation meetings. These happen with the teams that get the go ahead on the plan. So, and it's great to see. I'll be honest. The other thing is, as a leader, I will say one of the things I've struggled with in hybrid working is not seeing those things happen, because they happen in the background in teams meetings that you don't get to see. There's nothing better than seeing it happen in the office. It gives you pride that these things are going on day to day, and it also encourages that it's working. The innovation is actually happening. So, a bit selfish, but I do like it. But yeah, in the office, I mean, I think it's proven. It is an unpopular opinion, but every study under the sun says that a team that's working closer together typically can outperform a hybrid one. And it's the nuances of how we work and how the human brain works. We pick up interactions. We can see if someone didn't like that idea I just said versus checking all the images on screens. So it is a preference, though. It isn't a requirement. I would say the effort level from companies where you have to do it remote, from leadership and putting the frameworks in place, has to be a lot higher. And that effort needs to be there. And that was one of the biggest challenges when we went hybrid that we went through. The effort from leadership to put these things in place, especially when you've got new staff joining the business. And you might have gone through this 10 times with everyone that works there, and then you've got new teams coming in, and you forget you've not told them. So the frameworks have to be documented. It has to become natural through the organization, because then they just adopt to that way of working. So that was a lot of effort, but it can work on either. My preference, the kickoff meetings, though, are in person.
And it's interesting. We do. There's a lot of talk about actually give people a reason to come into the office.
Yeah.
And the number of leaders that I talk to, senior leaders, senior management team, and the reason they go into the office is not necessarily to go and sit on calls all day. They go into the office to see people, to go and see how other people are doing, to go and have meetings, to go and do those innovation sessions. So it does give that purpose to come into the office. But I guess we're coming back to what you said, Ben, and what was said earlier about culture. Actually, if you've put the frameworks in place, it is possible to develop and create and develop innovation in a hybrid working environment. So, Louise, how do you take innovation forward? Do you get everyone involved? I'm guessing not everyone, because you have a 2 pizza rule.
Well, no, 2 pizza rule is very good, but it is about having it cross-departmentally. So actually, it's about understanding, and our business training team are very good at identifying actually what are the impacts wider to this change. Because just because I've got a departmental change that I think will be really good, it may be actually a new USP that sales need to know about. I'll need some marketing content. So actually, it's about having that small group, but having someone across all areas that can really make a real impact. With the meetings, I think the biggest issue you have is when you've got the hybrid where most of you are in the office and you've got 1 or 2 people on screen, because I find they are either the entire focus of the meeting or they sit and say nothing. It is one or the other. They are never an equal part of a discussion. You are either just staring at that screen and they're leading it. So I think it's really important to make sure that actually, if you can do it in the office, you are doing it in the office. As you said, Ben, it's much better in terms of having those conversations, reading the body language. And it's about making sure that we can see all the way through actually what are the impacts. It's about having the departments nominate who that should be. There's no point in sitting there and going, I want you, you, and you. Actually, the departments know best who should be involved in that chain. And it needs to be a mix of frontline and operational. Because I always think it's really important. If a frontline agent has come up with that idea, they should be involved in the process. Yeah. They should be able to see that through and actually really involve them in that, as opposed to, yeah, we'll take this away and we'll come back to you when it's done. It was their idea in the first place. Let's give them the autonomy to come off the phones, to be involved in this change and to really see us follow that through, because it lets them see their impact. So I think that's really important. Obviously, if at some point it goes into dev, the devs teams will sit away and work on it. There's no point in me sitting there watching a dev code. However, it's about having either daily stand-ups or having check-ins with your stakeholders. And I appreciate a lot of this is just an agile methodology, but having us available to answer any questions where we can, having the subject matter experts available when the developers need us. And that really fosters a cross-departmental and a changing culture in terms of everyone is involved. It reduces the silos because you've got such a cross-functional team and everyone feels like they're feeding in.
That's so true. And do you know, just leaning back into something you said about actually you either all hybrid or all in the room. It's not uncommon to, if you've got I've had various meetings over the last few years in particular since the pandemic, where yes, suddenly, you know, there's 4 of you, 6 of you in the room, and there's 1 or 2 that are dialing in, and it's almost you all talk to the screen and shout at the screen so that they are fully engaged, or you almost forget that they're there. Someone said to me the other day, it was like a face in a jar. That you almost there isn't equality in the meeting. I think if you've got that kind of environment, one of the things that we don't do at the CCMA is have hybrid events for a similar kind of purpose. It's actually really hard to manage that kind of environment on top of actually what the business is about, what the meeting is about. It's really hard. But I guess with any change that you're going to go through in the contact center, there are some really fundamental things that need to happen. And one of them is communication. Now, Nerys, tell us a little bit more about why this is so important and how leaders should be communicating during the innovation development phase, especially in that hybrid environment. Nerys.
It's, you know, Ben's talked to it, Louisa's talked to it, but it is about that governance and cadence around communication, because you're not all going to be moving forward together. You do have to get that cross-functional perspective and that galvanizing of everybody's perspectives. Certainly, you know, I get involved when transformation is afoot. And transformation is big. We're not talking about small, different innovation around ways of working. Usually, the implementation of a new full suite of solutions is the point at which you think, right, now it's time to really consider our agent experience, our customer experience, and our operational experience, and where can we innovate and improve, reduce cost to serve, improve customer experience, improve all of that side of things. But it falls down if there's not good governance around communication. And so it doesn't matter the way in which which framework you put yourself in. I go into different businesses and they do it very differently. But what is the common critical part is that they have this comms focus and this recognition that whether it's on a portal, you said we did, whether it's, you know, a steering committee that comes together and the cadence is there to ensure that, and then the distribution of all the actions and the insights, that is just, it's kind of basic, but it's oftentimes the bit that means that the brilliant execution is stifled.
And I guess there's also an element of, especially when you're creating something innovative, there might be an element of actually we're going to keep this in this room or in this 4 screens, and there isn't there's maybe a nervousness about letting other functions know what's being developed, either because they might stop it, they might want to take it over, they might want to influence its future, but then and I guess that's something to overcome. Nerys, is that
yeah, it's a real system thinking approach, though, that you have to apply. You have to recognize that every cog affects every other cog. And so you can't do it in isolation, because you will impact marketing, you will impact delivery services, you will impact the back office. So you have to, you know, it's only ego and culture that will mean that you feel comfortable and confident in just doing it in isolation. And it's very likely to stay there and negatively impact potentially the other stakeholder communities. So you have to bring everybody together. You have to.
Ben, you're a CEO of an organization. How important do you see as communication is in terms of innovation development? I could talk to you about communication across business as well, but in particular around innovation.
Yeah, okay. One of the struggles we had where we failed when the pandemic hit is we lost that visibility around the organization of what's happening in departments, and silos were immediately created. So the communication, even around, everyone spoke about the safe working environment, the changing the language as well around failure. You're learning. So I love nothing more than a project where we decide not to continue, because engineers have the habit of, unless they finish, that it's not successful. But that comes from the language and as well as the communication that as leadership we all use, and we have to be very mindful of it. But also breaking down those silos, showing what's going on around the organization, promoting what's happening as well as those learnings. We even have areas where we've done some discovery, and we actually, if we don't continue, we write up what we learned and why we didn't decide to continue. So all the ideas are in a central location with the learning. So if someone's got an idea they want to put up, first place, go and see if it's already there, go and see if it was taken up. If not, why not? And it's just all those little things that we had to learn to get better at, that when you talk about all sound obvious. But they all came from, this isn't working, what do we need to do better, and evolution of it in the departments. We've then gone the other way, which doesn't get spoke about enough as well, is we've got too many ideas, too many things people want to do, and people pulling on priorities and projects. And then the biggest issue we've had in our organisation, and the most common one I talk with management, is prioritisation and decision making. And to me as a CEO, it's more important about the decision making process is robust rather than the decisions they're making, because I accept we're not going to get all the decisions right, but what I know, the process is thorough and it hasn't fell down somewhere. So, and again, language, it's an effort. I say this to everyone. People that are forced international, I think they understand. But as your business is growing and you're going through this change and you're getting larger as an organization, so departments are getting bigger, the effort you've got to put in to make this happen it should be all your senior leadership team meetings. It should be front and center, but also it should be owned by everyone. Yeah. All staff own this process. It's not just us. I'm one person. I can, there's only so much I can do. It's for the business to own, and that's then leads back to culture for me. So yeah, it all links together. It's massive. We failed when the pandemic hit, and I can tell you it was painful. So get it. I can also then say when you get it right, you can see the upside as well.
And you're feeling that?
Yeah, it's a lot better now. We went through the pain, though. I will say we did go through the pain. Didn't get it right first time either.
Well, a lot of businesses go through the pain to be able to benefit from the success. Louise, what are the mechanisms, the communication mechanisms and channels that you use to develop those innovation points?
Oh, we have loads. So we have what we call the changing times, which is talking about all the changes that are currently going on and where they are, which goes to the entire business so they can see. And actually that includes our learning. So actually this project has hit a stumbling point because we can't work out how to get past here, because it gives people the ability to feed in. We also have all of the dev changes we have done, because I think so much of what dev does is hidden. And actually they may do hundreds of changes a month, but because they're small and they're not big projects, people forget that they have other things to work on. So I think that helps break down some of the barriers that says, actually, the resource is busy. Just because they're not working on your change doesn't mean they're not doing. And then every Friday we have what we call our boss, which is a member of the exec leadership team with one of the heads of or one of our directors talking. And actually, this is open to the entire company. They can ask questions on anything they like. And sometimes that's, what did I have for lunch? And sometimes that's, where are we with this change? Or I've got this idea. Really variable. But actually, by giving everyone visibility, yes, quite often lots of people will feed in. Sometimes people just like it for information, but you're at least presenting that. So to Neris's point, nothing is hidden. Everyone is involved. There isn't the ego of this is my change and I will keep it in, because everything is shared with everyone. And actually one of our values is smart and other sustainability. But sustainability is actually about making sustainable change, having a culture of sustainable ways of working. It's not just obviously as an energy supplier, it's not just around net zero. It's about making sure that actually bring everyone on this journey. Part of what we do with the changes when we review them is where does this fit in our strategy? So our strategy, again, is shared with the entire business, and we have generally 3 separate strategies we're working on. Does this fit with one of these? If it doesn't, then actually it's not going to be prioritised in the same way. But actually one of them is around customer experience, which means most changes are going to impact the customer experience, which is great for me because it means everything goes through. I think for me, it's about communication. If you want innovation, involve people in the process. So it's not to say that you're going to put them all in the room. And to your point around not doing hybrid events, you're either all in the room or you're all hybrid. If a meeting is important enough to be called and you've called it face to face, people are going to want to turn up. They want to have their voice heard. It's about having that culture of listening. If people know they are listened to, they will attend and contribute. The more you try to exclude people from a process or don't involve them in change or don't give that feedback loop and don't have that communication piece, that's what stifles innovation, because people stop involving themselves. They stop being invested in the change itself.
And it's interesting how that culture, we've used a lot of language around having that base culture right. Right at the start of this session, we talked about value and purpose and making sure that you've got the right values and purpose to be able to enable innovation to thrive. Ben, you mentioned not failing. And making sure that people don't feel like they're failing and that there are opportunities to have your say without being shot down.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I come back to a lot of the language we use. So we, instead of failing, we have a pivot or persevere meeting. So if we, especially on bigger projects, so we set out what it is we need to learn, and then we call a pivot or persevere, easy for me to say, persevere. So we're going to carry on because we've learned what we need to know to keep going, or we've learned enough where actually we pivot, and that pivot could be to another project because it's going to deliver more value. So it's creating that structure, that the language we use, where even when that happens, we share our learnings because it might influence another project everywhere in the business. And it is so important, because when you do have a culture where people are really bought into your business, one of the big problems we faced is people didn't want to fail you. Almost personally, they don't want to fail the business. So they just continue. So that language, that communication, again, a bit of a framework from learning. I actually also, these meetings, these innovation projects have been our biggest opportunity for coaching and succession planning and spending time with leadership, because we don't have that as much anymore either. So you've just got to create it from top to bottom. You do lessons learned on everything. So every project, whether it's successful or not, is a lessons learned. That way, lessons learned doesn't have a negative condemnation, because we should be encouraging the things that did work well. And it's just having that throughout the organization. And again, I keep going back, it's effort, and it comes from everyone. It obviously starts with leadership, and we all need to be very aligned and that singular voice and buy-in commitment to this, as this is what we want to achieve.
Totally. And I think, Ben, in a previous conversation, you mentioned actually sometimes you've got to slow down to keep up. And because, of course, innovation isn't necessarily business as usual, which means it's extra time, it's extra effort if you don't have necessarily, or if you haven't built that time into your day. Yeah,
absolutely. And even we build it into our quarters. So we speak about developers a lot. Our developers, we actually allocate a sprint, a quarter of time for these sessions to give it done. So it's, and that buy-in has to be from everyone. You have to be, it's expensive to do. You count up man hours. It's very expensive to do this. But I talk about it, slowing down to speed up is a weird concept, because I'm an ex-engineer and I used to run at 100 miles an hour. And I used to think faster, faster, faster. And actually, if we spend the time up front, we get together, we get those cross-functional teams, we put the effort in ahead. Actually, the way the projects run is the slow at the beginning. And when we get to that point of what we learn and confidence increases, because the confidence, it's not mine, common thing, but I really believe in it. If you don't know, if you're not 40% confident, you need to learn more. But if you're over 70% confident, you've waited too long, because you're never going to be 100. So we're learning, and then we usually have a good plan. We're usually sitting around that 70 to 80%, and then you execute and you find you get the project done faster. And it took me a lot of time to learn that, I will be honest, But it is so true, and you actually get more done. You get more projects finished, the more successful. It just works out better. And again, you abandon projects as well. It needs to be safe to abandon a project. That I can't say how important that is.
Yeah, it's so true. And actually, to close the innovation cycle, Nerys, what advice would you give? You work on projects all the time. It's one of the things that you do for a living. But what advice would you give for how to use the successful implementation of innovation? How, what advice would you give once you've successfully implemented it, and how do you successfully implement it?
Oh, yeah. So past the point of, right, so the idea's come into fruition, you've implemented it, executed it, but it's never going to stop. There is always going to be a need to innovate and iterate on that and continue to improve. But you do have to take a point and celebrate and recognize that went really well, because this is constantly, again, feeding into this culture. Anyone that's listening into this webinar is of no doubt that Louise and Ben are in organizations that are very human, very growth mindset focused, and they are prepared and ready to drive innovation. I work with lots of businesses that don't look and feel like that at all. And so you've got to think about and recognize that and go, how do I shift into a growth mindset? And how do I then drive some of the best practice principles? So yeah, it's all about continuing to learn, but taking a pause and reflecting back. Obviously I judge for the X's, and that is the brilliant point of which people go, this was a good transformation, and I'm ready to put myself forward for an award for it, and recognize everybody that was involved, and then get really drunk and celebrate it at the incredible awards ceremony, as an example. But you do have to reflect on success whilst continuing to iteratively improve.
And I guess clearly I am with you that you should celebrate the success of implementing an innovation, and I would be remiss of not mentioning the X's and the UK National Contact Centre Awards. But I guess it also creates that platform that if you do stop and reflect back, actually that's quite a learning curve as well, because it enables you to then move forward and start looking at what you can build on. So I have one final question for you guys before we close. What do you think is the key consideration that industry leaders should be thinking about when innovating in a hybrid working environment, especially when thinking about that leadership team? Where shall I start? Nerys, I'm going to come back to you first.
So I guess just bouncing off what we've just talked about, I think it is being very purposeful and be really clear on the pillars that so everybody knows that they're aligning their ideas into buckets that the business is trying to achieve, and then recognizing if you need to adapt and create a growth mindset, read more books, defer to more people who are doing it right. All of that. So I think that would be my advice to organizations who feel they're not getting it right and not driving innovation.
Thank you, Nerys. Louise, what would be your advice?
Bring people on a journey, be clear with what you're trying to achieve, and understand that while I absolutely apply the two pizza principle, when you are celebrating success, involve everybody. Everyone in your business is accountable and responsible for the success of it. Celebrate them. Make sure that you're right, it's not BAU. You have to make time to innovate. Make time to celebrate that as well. Award ceremonies are great, absolutely love them. Celebrate internally. Give your own trophies. Nice. Absolutely celebrate the success of your people and know that they are the reason that your business is succeeding.
Thank you, Louise. Ben, what's your advice?
My head's going around with everything. I would say it needs to, from a leadership team level, you need to make it a priority. And I think a lot of people talk about wanting to be innovative, and they say it on a company meeting and they slap it on a wall, but they don't actually put the effort required into do it. And it needs to be, because for example, one of the struggles we have is new staff come in. Well, the common answers we always get, but why did you do it that way? Because that's how it used to be where I used to work. So you're constantly breaking these barriers down. So the effort is there, and it has to be a priority, not just now as you get it going, but it is continual. Put the frameworks in place that drive it. So like those pizza meetings, the crazy idea boards, and you have to put the framework there. You have to create the structure. You have to do initiatives to get it going. You need champions in each department that are also doing the same, because it doesn't just come from you. And then that, once you think you've got, you get in there, you have to double down and keep going. Because if you take your foot off the gas, it's amazing how fast it actually stops. So just keep going and make it a business priority for the whole leadership team. You'll all have to be on board for it.
Thank you so much, Ben. And hey, I that was fascinating. Loads of ideas came out there. Even if the one thing that you absolutely take away is the 2 pizza rule. Love that. Or maybe a hackathon. Hopefully you guys found that really, really useful, and have got ideas that you can take away, maybe even this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. And Louise, Nerys and Ben, really, really appreciate you joining me as well, and your support on having this conversation. And Ben and the team at Max Contact really appreciate the support you're giving the CCMA at the moment. Yeah, really, really thankful for that. And thank you all for your contributions. Thanks for sharing in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.